So, you've decided to take an interest in your personal finances. First off, just deciding to take your money seriously is already a huge step that a lot of people never take, so well done. It might seem a little daunting at first, but don't worry. My name is Marco, and today I'm going over exactly what steps you need to take to get your finances in order and eventually get your money to start working for you. Now, the first thing you need to do is to compare your income with your expenses. If you're spending all of the money you make each month, then you're going to be living paycheck to paycheck, like the majority of Americans, or almost half of Australians. In order to make some progress with your money and eventually start building some wealth, you need to create a gap between your expenses and your income so that you have some money left over at the end of the month. And here's exactly how you can start doing that. The first thing you can start with is extremely easy, and it's giving that like button down there a quick tap. It really helps out the channel, and it will let me make more videos that will eventually turn you into a millionaire. In all seriousness though, the first thing you need to do can potentially be a bit daunting because it's finding out exactly where your money goes each month. A lot of people don't want to confront their own spending habits, but if you truly want to get control of your money, it's one of the most important things you can do. So, print out your last few months of bank statements for all of your accounts and cards, and then you can start going through all of your transactions one at a time and start entering them into a basic spreadsheet like this one, or writing them down by hand if you prefer. Your aim is to sort your spending into some broad categories so you can get an idea of where you're spending your money. Things like groceries, utilities, transportation, and so on. You can be as specific or as general as you like, as long as that helps you understand where you're spending money. When you finish sorting all of your transactions, you can average each of the categories out to see how much you spend in a typical month. This can be a pretty eye-opening experience if you've never done it before, and you might realize that you've been spending way more money than you thought on coffee or groceries or takeout or something else. Now that you know exactly where you've spent your money for the last few months, you can start planning where you want to spend your money for the next few months with some realistic numbers of what you actually need. You're probably familiar with the concept of a budget, and most people hate them, hate writing them, hate trying to stick to them, hate feeling disappointed that they couldn't stick to them. But don't worry, I'll show you exactly how to do it and how to make things way easier for yourself. Grab that handy spreadsheet you just spent so long on. Yes, we are actually going to use it, so you didn't waste all that time for nothing. Have a look at your different categories and decide which of those are essential costs that you can't really control. These are things like rent or mortgage payments, payments on any credit cards or other loans that you might have, utilities, phone bills, internet, etc. Now, you can actually try to reduce some of these, but for the moment, we're just going to assume that they're fixed roughly where they are. Take all of those costs and start entering them into a new spreadsheet under some broad category like built-in living expenses. For things that aren't exactly fixed, like water or electricity bills that can go up or down each billing cycle, I'd recommend being a bit more conservative with those by overestimating them so that you have a bit more breathing room. The next section is for necessary expenses that are a little bit more flexible. These are things like groceries, transportation, replacing damaged clothing and shoes, but not impulse purchases of things you don't absolutely need, medical expenses. These are a bit more difficult to accurately budget for, but it's okay if you get individual categories wrong. We're just trying to get a broader idea of what you might need. You can use the spreadsheet of your last few months' expenses as a general guide, but you can make some adjustments to it. For example, if you know you spent a lot more than you should have on groceries in the last few months, you can reduce this amount in your budget a bit. Or if you haven't spent anything on medical expenses, but you know flu season is coming up, feel free to add a little bit extra. Side note, never assume your medical expenses are going to be zero because you'll always need something, even if it's just some headache tablets. Once again, it's okay if you get your initial numbers wrong when you actually try to follow your budget going forward. It takes a while and a few iterations to fine-tune your budget to match what you actually need. Now that you've covered all of your necessary living expenses in those first two sections, you should only be left over with fun things. Things like going out to eat, getting a coffee, going to see a movie if cinemas are even open where you live, subscriptions to Netflix and Spotify, and all those other things that are nice to have but not absolutely necessary for your continued existence. This is where you get to make a really important decision that can have a huge impact on how you live in the future. How much are you going to save? Now, most experts recommend something in the range of 10 to 20% of your income as the minimum savings rate, but it comes down to a really simple and easy to remember rule of thumb. The more, the better. If after your living expenses are covered in your budget, you're only left with about 10% of your income, then this might be all you can manage to save right now. However, if your living expenses only take up about 50% of your income, you might want to save something more like 25 to 30% and leave the rest for some fun stuff. This brings me to a very important point. It is actually important to leave some money in your budget to enjoy yourself. A budget that only covers the bare necessities and saves everything else is not sustainable in the long term. You can do it for short bursts at a time if you're trying to pay off some credit cards or save up for a big holiday, but after several months of never being able to spend any money on anything that isn't strictly necessary, most people would probably give up on their budgets entirely. So, decide how much you want to save first and put the rest into a discretionary fund that you get to spend on whatever you like. I also want to mention that some people might have run the numbers and realized that their basic living expenses take up their entire income and they don't have any gap to put towards savings. Now, I'm going to be making some videos on different ways to decrease your basic living expenses, but if you can't cut back at all, then the only way to make that gap is to start increasing your income. I'm also going to be making some videos on different ways to do that, so subscribe and stay tuned. So at this stage, you should have accomplished 4 things. You figured out exactly how much you spend each month, you worked out how much you need to cover your basic living expenses, you decided what portion of your income you're going to put towards savings each month, and you accounted for some discretionary spending on fun things. Now, deciding how much to save is fantastic, but actually hitting that number can be a little bit more difficult. We humans like to think that we're logical creatures, but the truth is that when it comes to spending money, this is how most of us decide how much to spend. Hey, do you want to go out tonight? Yeah, I've still got money in my account. If you try to spend only what you need to and put everything that's left over into savings at the end of the month, there's a very good chance that you'll end up spending more money than you originally planned to. In order to make sure this doesn't happen, you can automate your finances so that you don't have to constantly think about it. Here's how to do it. Almost every bank will let you set up automatic recurring transfers. If you're a salaried employee that gets paid the same amount every month, you can set up an automatic transfer to draw out money after you've been paid and put it straight into your savings account. This means that you never even really see your full paycheck, just the amount that you've decided you're allowed to spend. This means even if you spend all of the money in your account by the time next pay cycle rolls around, it's okay because you're still building up the savings by the amount that you decided earlier. If, however, your pay varies month to month, you might want to fix your spending instead of your saving to make sure that you have enough to live on and then save everything else. Here's an example to show you how it would work. Let's say you worked out you need $2,000 to cover your expenses and your pay fluctuates somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000 a month. You can set up a couple of different accounts to manage your money, whether it's with the same bank or with different banks. First of all, your money gets paid into one account. On the first day of the month, or whenever you prefer, you can have an automatic transfer to send $2,000 into a separate checking account, which you then use to spend on whatever you need that month. Whatever is left over in your first account then gets paid straight into your savings account. One month it might only be $500, the next month it might be $1,500. The important thing is that you're never spending more than you should, and you're still making progress on your savings goals, even if it varies month to month. Now, if you follow all of those steps, hopefully you'll find yourself in a situation where you're not spending all of your money every month, and you can start putting some money aside. But I can already hear you asking, but Marco, what should I do with that money? Should I pay off my debts or build up my savings? Which debt should I pay off first? Should I put my money in the stock market? Do I need an emergency fund? Should I buy real estate? Should I buy leveraged call options on Tesla? To which I would say, whoa, slow down there. Unfortunately, I can only cover so much in a single video, but rest assured I've got a ton more videos coming that will cover all of that and more, telling you everything you need to know to eventually become a financially independent millionaire. Seriously. So if that sounds interesting to you, feel free to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.